I'm Amita, and I feel truly honored and humbled to moderate this ignited discussion in the capacity of the co-chair of Citi India Pride Network. I'm the APAC lead for Testing Center of Excellence for Personal Banking and Wealth Management. And, as requested, because, I was requested to speak about my journey initially. So little bit about my journey. So I am also a woman who has traversed through the journey of gender transition, socially, legally, medically. So significant time of my life, I struggled with something which is medically recognized as gender dysphoria, and then have gone through a metamorphosis to be my true self, to be my authentic self, to be the woman I always wanted to be. My TEDx talk, which is about my journey, is very much available in YouTube. Feel free to watch. But today's discussion is not about my journey. It's more about these ignited, trailblazers, the entrepreneurs that we have with us. So without any further ado, let's try to get familiar with them. So maybe I'll start with Lamea. So Lamea is a 21-year-old social entrepreneur and activist, currently doing her undergrads in English at University of Dhaka. Economical liberation and transgender rights are the two areas she is passionate to do advocacy on. She founded the platform Transcend. She's also Ashoka Young Changemaker Ally Fellow, Peace First Fellow, and the Diana Award 2021 recipient. She's also participated and won the DUCSU election 2019 as a Sufia Kamal Hall General Member. Believing in making a difference and taking one step at a time, she dreams of a world full of compassion, empathy, and sustainability. Welcome to the discussion, Lamea. As an opening pitch, because some of us might not know what Transcend is all about, would you like to talk about Transcend?
Yes. Thank you so much, Amita. I was very excited to meet you. I watched your TEDx video and I was very excited to meet you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I am actually talking from my university campus. I joined in between my classes. It's very hectic to manage work and everything besides study. Yet I'm very thrilled to be here and share my journey with you all. Yes, so I'm Tanha, and thank you so much, Amita, for such nice introduction. I am the founder of TransEnd, which is a social venture that works to that aims to help the marginalized, transgender, the gender diverse, non-binary, intersex community of our country who had been marginalized and are deprived of their rights since colonization. And we try to help them empower them socially and economically through sensitization programs, training, employment, and entrepreneurship. We launched several social awareness campaigns in our social media platforms. Also, we manage trainings for the transgender people. And at the same time, after the training sessions are done, we try to cater them in mainstream job or help them in their entrepreneurship journey. So yes, that's all about me and my platform. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Lamea. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Please correct me if in case it's wrong. Now, just pandemic has been tough for all of us. We are not still, out of it completely. So what has been your cope-up mechanism, let's say, especially for the last 2 years? It has been tough, especially on the mental health front. How did you keep yourself going or just stay put? What did you do?
Yes, thank you for the question. So yes, so the pandemic had been a very big toll for us since a lot of our work was catered in doing field researches, going to the HITRA hubs, taking surveys and interviews. We had to postpone it and we're like a bit lost. What are we going to do now? And I just had typhoid, and I was like admitted in the hospital, and I had this very bad mental health breakdown. But yeah, thanks to my team and some of my mentors who helped us with guidelines, and some of the hijra gurus, some of the transgender activists who always were there with us. And then back that time when we had to postpone our field researches, we tried to use the social media platform. We did a lot of social media campaigns. I'm really sorry about the background noise. I hope it's tolerable. Yeah, so this is how we try to, pivot and stay with our momentum and stay together to make our movement go forward.
Great, great. Thank you for sharing that with us. Moving on to the next panelist, Sadam Hanjabam. Sadam, welcome to the discussion. May I ask your gender pronouns, please?
Yeah, hi, Amita, thank you so much. Yeah, you can use he, him, his.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I hope I am pronouncing your name correctly.
Yeah, definitely.
Great, great. Thank you for that, Sadam. So Sadam is the founder of Yaol, a Northeast India's first registered queer and youth-led focused organization based in Imphal, and the editor of Paumi Post, a digital storytelling platform for Manipuris. He's also the curator of Asia's first all-trans men football team. He was the only queer person to be awarded the Better India's COVID Warrior Award in 2020. And Yaol was listed amongst 10 global initiatives led by queer people fighting an inclusive fight around the globe by United Nations Envoy on Youth. Sadam was acknowledged by Dettol amongst 100 protectors recently, and his story has been documented by Apple TV in a docu-series called The Me You Can't See, co-produced by Oprah and Prince Harry. Welcome to the discussion, Sadam. As your opening remarks, would you like to talk about Yaol? Would you like to share the information with us?
Yeah, Yaol, means revolution in my language, in Mittal. So we are a young organization also, which was created as a support group for young LGBTI individuals in conflict zones, like in the northeast part of the country, in the border areas. We started it as an adolescents and young LGBTI support group, which is very informally in 2017. But we are now a registered organization working towards mostly on the health and well-being of the young key populations. So we work around on a lot of intersections around 4 key themes about health, sports, then media storytelling, and definitely livelihood and financial inclusion. So it is something which was not present in our region, and definitely we are looking forward to have these 4 pillars connected on the main focus, that is good health and well-being, that is sustainable development goal number 3. And definitely we are happy to be part of this panel and looking forward to learn more from our panelists and you too.
Great, great. Thank you for sharing that with us. So what has been your cope-up mechanism, especially during the lockdown?
Yeah, we have a strong peer support model, which is our strongest point. So we have shared on all our peer supports. For me also, the way we started coping up was able to do because of my friends and the community that we work with. So we reached out to more than 8,000 young people during COVID through crowdfunding. And it has helped us in different stages, like not only on one stage, but we kept in touch. We supported each other in terms of mental health helplines. We created a helpline where more than 3,000 people called. And we also, kind of assisted young people with food requirements, nutritional requirements, then again, sanitary, like young people who need menstrual pads, people who needed contraceptives during the time. So the crowdfund helped us to connect more with the community and to also keep us busy. So the shared responsibility helped coping, and definitely it was such a big learning during the crisis.
Great, great. Moving on to the third panelist for today's panel discussion, Shorya Mittal. Shorya, may I ask your gender pronouns, please?
Hey, Amita. So I go by the pronouns of she and her.
Great, great. Thank you for that. So, Shorya, an engineer by profession, is a humanitarian amidst people solely working on logic. She started the organization Humans of Safe Places while still in college as a result of being surrounded by issues herself that she thought needed to be talked about and shared with people. Currently incubated under the Innovation Marketplace by UNDP, she's on a mission to make the world a safer place by destigmatizing social issues like mental health, sexual abuse, homophobia, discrimination, toxic masculinity, and much more. Welcome to the panel discussion, Shorya. Would you like to talk about Humans of Safe Places?
Sure. So thank you for the wonderful introduction, Amita. So Humans of Safe Places on a mission to build safe and empathetic communities for better emotional and mental well-being of individuals. We believe that empathetic, non-judgmental conversations have the power to heal, and we are therefore working for more accessible mental health services through community-led initiatives. This is a bit about us.
Great, great. So what has been your cope-up mechanism during the pandemic?
For us, I think the cope-up, the major mechanism for coping up. So while I think we were at the peak of pandemic, there were a lot of, I remember that there were a lot of personal and professional challenges that I was facing. I mean, we were working, so we had this program going on around that time. We call it Empathy Ambassadors Program, as part of which we capacitated college-going individuals to create safe places within college campuses, and we observed how so many of us, how so many students, how so many people were tackling and going through so many challenges. So for us, I think it started with first creating safe places for our own selves within the organization, within the community, understanding our own mental health needs, because it is very important for us to be doing fine on our own first, and then it's only then can we help or be of any kind of assistance to other people. So identifying that part, taking regular breaks, and at the same time project like going forward with the campaign, with the work that we were doing at the same time in the right kind of way. So I remember that the campaign, the program started in January, but the pandemic hit its peak somewhere, I think, in Feb or March, and we were in the middle of our program. So we were agile enough to rework the program just to change it, or suit it to the needs of whatever that was needed at that point of time. So I think these were the few things that we did back then, and that I think really helped us.
Great, great. Thank you for sharing that. So mostly, for a lot of us, kind of keeping ourselves busy with whatever activities were possible during those times has been the cope-up mechanism. All right. So now, further deep diving into the discussion, there is this more marginalized section within the marginalized section of LGBTI+, and that is the transgender umbrella. And especially if you look at, the Indian context or Pakistan or Bangladesh, there is this extremely marginalized community within that called as Hijra community. India has an estimated 4 million Hijras. That's the population we are talking about, and they have a history recorded to more than 4,000 years old. And a lot of these individuals are shunned by their families at a very young age. They do not have education, no skillings, and they're ostracized without food, shelter, home, and that's where they have to resort to various kind of non-respected ways of living. Could be begging, or could be sex work and stuff like that. Now, change is taking place, yes. So like, for example, in India, we have third gender as a legally recognized gender, and then after that recognition, there are framework related changes happening in terms of overall protection, or in terms of the overall kind of legal framework and stuff like that. Pace is debatable, but yes, change is happening. But at the same time, what we see around happening is, I'll narrate an incident. So it is available in public domain. So Kochi Metro went ahead and decided to create employment opportunities for Hijra community. And that's where they hired certain trans women from the Hijra community. There was this huge, PR stunt, which was created, which was applauded, amazing move. But then 6 months down the line, one by one, all these trans women left Kochi Metro. So at the end of 6 months, there was nobody, no trans woman working with Kochi Metro. And the reason behind that was, yes, employment they received, but along with the employment, these marginalized individuals, ostracized individuals, needed a supportive ecosystem to sustain through that. Like, for example, nobody was ready to rent out apartments to these individuals. They did not have place to stay. Similarly, they had to constantly go through kind of discrimination at every step of the way, which became difficult for them to bear. That's how they prefer to kind of go back to their previous ways of living rather than continuing with Kochi Metro. So my question to Lamea is, to begin with, would you like to talk about such challenges that you have seen, especially for Transcend, and how are you creating a supportive ecosystem for sustainability of these individuals?
Thank you so much, Amita. The points you have just shared, I didn't know about this in India, but that's like the same here, like the same. I mean, I definitely the issues that you have mentioned. How, I mean, me myself is a queer woman. Yes, the amount of stigma, the amount of marginalization that the trans women, the hetero community, the transgender community had to face as like, and I mean, I just when I see it, this is the reason we built this platform, right? And then when we started doing this, I mean, when we started going in those hubs, talking to them, and then we found out that they want is they don't want to do this traditional way of begging or the sex working anymore. A lot of them, they want to do to work in mainstream job sector. Some of them, they are very educated and they want to continue their studies and they want to do this job. And because they have that hope, if they do work in the mainstream job, maybe their family will take them in. I mean, a lot of them, they are abandoned from their family, right? And the number in our country, I mean, the government even didn't take any step to have a proper statistic, but there's this local number, which is like almost nearly 2 million, right? So it's not very small, it's a very big number. There is amount of people are being marginalized for this long. So whenever I found out that they want job, and then this the peer stand that Amita just talked about. So in our country in last year, the government announced this policy of 5% tax rebate for the corporate sector who will hire transgender people. Now look, 5% activity is a very big thing. And then again, there's this where once our Rashnuban, who became first ever transgender newscaster in our country, it became such a big news. She was featured for this in Guardian, in New York Times, a lot of these international newspapers. So all of things sort of gave this thing in the corporate sector, like, oh, if we maybe it's a time we show people that we're inclusive and yada yada. So yeah, and then we started to get this a lot of approaches from a lot of corporate startups, companies that they want to hire transgender people. We were very happy initially.
Lamea, sorry to interrupt you. It would help if you can hold the microphone a little bit closer to your mouth because of the surrounding. It's becoming difficult to kind of, hear you. So it would help if you can hold it extremely close so that all of us can hear you. Extremely close, more closer than that.
Is it better?
I think it's better, yeah.
Okay, cool. So
Sorry
what
for that.
happened is, we had this, so corporate wanted to hire them, But we definitely have this concern that there will be, I mean, what if these transgender people get bullied in the workplace, and like a lot of other concern that you say, same things happens here. Not all the trans people, when they go to rent an apartment, the landlords don't give them that, and the landlords take like 3x more money from a transgender uh, tenant rather than a cisgender tenant. So look, their living costs are more than the cisgender people. So, and then there goes the healthcare cost, there goes the transitioning cost. So these are the issues that the corporates, let alone corporates, the government even don't understand. This is why they give this very abrupt policy. I mean, well, there, yes, the policy was there. There are some benefit of it, but it definitely wasn't a very comprehensive policy. Um, so rather, if there are like other policies like the parents cannot uh, abandon transgender people or things like that, that would make more sense. So so what happened is they hired transgender people, and after like some weeks the transgender people started to leave, or you know, they sort of started to face this discrimination. Same thing happened here as well. Yeah, I'd like to continue like a bit like in a minute. I'm sorry, I think there's a storm happening. I'll just go inside, and I think we can hear from the next panelist.
Yeah, thank you. And meanwhile, if it's possible for you, you can settle down somewhere and, you know, kind of try to reduce the background noise, because there is this struggle to understand what you're saying. Cynthia, are you able to hear Lamea properly? Okay, great. All right. Thank you for those insights, Lamea. Now coming to you, Sadam. Very soon, that is on May 17th, we'll be observing IDAHOBIT. So for those of you who don't know what is IDAHOBIT, it's International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Transphobia. So Sadam, would you like to touch base upon it? Why do we need to observe IDAHOBIT, and if possible, from the trans men's challenges perspective? So you can also help the audience understand what is a trans man and what are the typical challenges they go through, and why do we need to observe a day like IDAHOBIT?
Yeah, definitely. Like IDAHOBIT was something which was started, and why May 17 is important is that it was the day when the WHO, World Health Organization, declassified homosexuality as a disease. So the main, the main challenge before that was, homosexuality was still considered as a disease, or an abnormality, something from the point of a medical point of view. So definitely there was a lot of struggle earlier for for getting recognized as we are, or as you are, as very regular human beings and not a person living with a disease. So it helped, in a big way of how individuals were, being normalized in a way that this is no longer a disease, but this is what our sexual identities, and this are our orientation, and it has nothing to do with one's, being sick or not. So that was the important point which helped from the May 17, and that's why it's being commemorated every year. So now it is one of the most important days, and this is also the day when Yaol started back in 2017. We started a support group then, that we also want to come out in public and want to create this network to support more people who are unable to come out and seek support. So that's why. And one thing of why we are more focusing on trans men in our work is also because transgender men, when we say about transgender, many people only see trans women. And that was also because most of the programs on transgender were focused on health programs, on HIV related health programs. And in that, only gay men who have sex with men, and only transgender women were considered as more vulnerable populations. So they were included under targeted interventions by different programs, like in India, it's by National AIDS Control Organization. So only these two populations were given focus. So a lot of issues started coming out from transgender men and many other people from the LGBT community, whose health is also similarly vulnerable. So focus was not given on them. So mostly we started working with the transgender component, but mostly focusing on the trans men. And definitely we are working with the other spectrum here also. And that's why, how our football team was created was because it was just not about a sports, but it was about creating an impact in a bigger way using sports as a means, because most of the time square people were thought to be physically weak and often stereotyped into certain kind of jobs and vocations. But we wanted to pick up something which can show people that we are equally, we can perform equally. You just have not given us that platform. So for trans men, we picked up football, and that's how when we played it around, people started seeing transgender men as equal to something who can do anything. Like sports is not only for either men or women, but it's also for transgender persons. It's also not for non-binary persons. So that is how we started, collaborating on different ways of not talking only about health, but wellness as a whole component of wellness of strength, wellness of having a job, wellness of having a dignified life. So yeah, that's how it's important to us. Yeah, Amita.
And maybe some of the audience members or listeners will not know what is a trans man. So would you like to touch base upon that aspect also a little? Who is a trans man?
Generally, in a very simple term, like transgender men are transgender persons who are born in a female's body but identify themselves as men, in a very simple term. So we know about transgender women that who were born in a man's body but they identify themselves as women. So they are trans women. So it's the opposite of that. It's trans men. It's a very simple term.
Great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Sadam. Also, for the listeners, in case you have any question, please feel free to interrupt and ask your question. And anyway, at the end of the day, we are end of the session, we are kind of reserving a slot for questions. But then in case you want to ask in the middle of the session, feel free to raise your hand and, I'll give you an opportunity to ask your question also. Yeah. All right. So moving on. People in the LGBTQ community experience mental health issues at higher rates. There are certain studies which have been carried out, and a recent study found 61% have depression, 45% have post-traumatic stress disorder, and 36% have an anxiety disorder. Additionally, 40% of transgender person or transgender individuals have attempted suicide in their lifetime. So, as you can all understand, for a queer person, it's a journey, and it's a very difficult journey. Constantly, they are made fun of, they are ridiculed, they are singled out. And it's not just in terms of society. A lot of these individuals also have these struggles with their own families. And that's where there is no comfort space. There is no happy place which they can kind of count upon. And that is what leads to severe issues, mental health issues for these individuals. It's a struggle. And it's not just about trans persons. I know so many queer individuals who have tried to attempt suicide because of these issues. So coming to Shorya, would you like to touch base upon this through your experiences of dealing with LGBTI plus individuals, their struggles, and how humans of safe places have been helping them?
Okay. Thank you for the question, Amita. So I think for me, what I've observed is that still the larger narrative around being a queer individual, sort of limits to their coming out story. And this is what I think is where humans of safe places have played a role in, is to normalize stories of queer individuals as individuals who are having mental health issues, being part of dysfunctional families, being victims or survivors of sexual abuse and trauma, and so on. Because as you rightly said, that queer people are much more vulnerable and much more likely to have been victims or to have been undergoing PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or to have been survivors of sexual abuse. And I think that is something that it is very important to normalize and remove the stigma that exists around these conversations, and to really remove the tokenism that exists around it, that being a queer individual or the struggle to be a queer individual ends with their coming out story. So I think that is very, very important. And to really see what it is to be queer, and how it intersects with so many other things, including religion, caste, socioeconomic backgrounds, the kind of support system you have, and so many other things. And removing the stigma that exists around these issues, and to sort of talk more about them, normalizing the conversations, and bringing them to the forefront and providing equal visibility. Second point has to be about providing equal visibility, because when we talk about marginalization, it's not only in terms of resources, opportunities, etc., but it is also in terms of visibility. There is the major, I think, platforms that provide visibility are still predominantly heteronormative. And therefore, providing equal visibility is very, very important. Then I think the third step has to be providing the right kind of role models. Because, when we talk more and more about queer people overcoming their challenges and, coming out of different difficult situations and, living the life that they intend to, or at least being closer to living the life that they want to, that I think sort of empowers more and more individuals to accept themselves, and to also take that step, that one first step that is needed to, live the life that they should live, or they would want to live. And then, of course, providing them access to resources. So community-led initiatives for us have helped us a lot, wherein creating those kind of safe support systems and those safe communities wherein they can be themselves without the fear of being judged or abused or trolled for just being themselves. So I think those are the few things that we have done, and that I think is something that we can do as a larger society, that I think will go a long way.
Shorya, thank you so much for touch basing upon that very important point, because I myself was really surprised when I had a conversation with a senior person, who has traveled the world, who is really senior in terms of designation, in terms of the overall experience, telling me that, your journey and your struggles are over the moment you have transitioned. This is the kind of misconception individuals have. And that's why the point that you have made is so required, that a queer person's journey maybe is more difficult after they come out. It's not easy after they come out. In fact, it gets worse after they're coming out, because then the single out process becomes more evident, which might not be evident before coming out. And not just singling out, the overall process, the overall us versus them divide becomes extremely severe after the queer person comes out. And then there is this fight constantly, which the queer person needs to put across, also around meritocracy and representation. So every time, there is this kind of reduction that happens of the queer person's identity rather than their achievements. And there is this kind of murmuring that happens, that you're here because of your different identity. And that's a fight which a queer person has to constantly fight on. So thank you so much for touch basing upon that point. Around that now, Sadam, I do have a question. Would you like to touch base upon this aspect? Do you think a queer person's journey ends after they come out? So let's say a trans man transitions and now life is all hunky-dory, dancing in the garden and, celebrating. Is that how it is?
First of all, I would like to correct something. I'm not a trans man, I'm gay. And definitely the question coming back to the question as a queer person. So it has been, difficult in the way that now as Shorya and you were also saying that there's a different journey after coming out. Like the journey before coming out was it was more traumatic, definitely. But again, when you come out and you starts working on it, then definitely your new struggles comes out one after another. Like where we have been always told to fit in, right? In a different way. And somehow, as a when we work with the community, or also when we negotiate with other organizations or companies for job opportunities, or about about healthcare settings to be more inclusive, there are a lot of questions that which are thrown to us in a way that sometimes we don't feel like they are just doing it for the name. But definitely the safe space that we need, it's not created anywhere. It's more about, once you come out, as you say, once you come out, everyone thinks that your struggle is over. But definitely this is not true. We as a even as a like for a heterosexual or straight person, the struggles are different. They don't have to come out anyways. But you face different challenges of life at different points. It's same for us also. It's just that we had one another hurdle which we went to come out, and even though after that there are more hurdles in life as we go on. Yeah.
Thank you, Sadam. And the thought process behind the question was because you formed the first football team comprising of trans men. So it was more about your experience with the trans men and not about your identity. So, but yes, thank you for mentioning that. So thank you for your insights. Now a question for all three of you. Whoever want to start can start. So, Shorya also kind of touched base upon this aspect, rainbow tokenism. We have seen, I mean, maybe that has been the beginning of the inclusion journey, which is okay. I mean, especially in the month of Pride, we see company logos being colored, painted in rainbow color, people putting their photos on social media with some frame and, holding placards, proud ally and all that. Fine. Rainbow tokenism, maybe that was the beginning of the overall inclusion process. Okay. Now there is this need of the hour of going beyond the rainbow tokenism and creating employment opportunities for the LGBTI plus individuals, queer individuals. And all three of you are doing this amazing work. That's why you are trailblazers. You are creating various opportunities for this marginalized individuals. So I would like to understand, and the audience would like to understand, what are the typical challenges you go through in tapping the LGBTI plus talent, and how you have been kind of overcoming those to ensure you reach out the talent, kind of skill them as required, and further, groom them from the sustainability perspective. Any one of you can start.
Yeah, I think I can start with that.
Sure.
So basically, little going back to what we do again, like since we are a youth organization where we focus only on adolescents and young people below 35. So mostly this is the stage where everyone is looking for a job or some opportunities to grow ahead and live a more respectful and dignified life, right? But the biggest challenge for queer community is like in this time when they are adolescents and young, they are bullied and harassed, and most of them drop out from school or are unable to pick up with other colleagues of the same group or of the same age. So most of the time for transgender persons, they often leave the school. They discontinue learning, and that becomes a huge struggle when they go forward and try to get a job or any other opportunity. So that is the first challenge which they face. But for other queer people like me, I won't say this is an advantage, but some way for what do I say, even cis gay men, definitely they go through the same abuse and same harassment, but somehow they tend to complete the education. And in that aspect, transgender persons have more vulnerability and less chances of getting into a job properly. And that's how you have been also mentioning about how many Hijra communities or Hijra individuals or many other transgender persons definitely you know, the first requirement for a job or something, economic inclusion is, you know, they ask for your CV, they ask for a resume, but there's nothing there. So that is the biggest challenge that we are also facing now. That most of the younger ones, they are not able to complete education. So what we do is we push them to complete the education, you know, at least, and also try to connect them to, skill-based service providers. Like the government of India has certain programs on skill-based, which we are negotiating with, and telling them that you should take these persons because, you know, these are the people who need the most. So like the DDU-GKY is a program which is run by the government of India. It's a skill-based rural livelihood missions program. And any person who has completed 10+2 from any gender can be provided, you know, free training for 6 months. Footing, lodging, renting, everything is free. And they will be provided job for 6 months. The next 6 months, they will be placed in another city for the 6 months. So this program is as a safety network for everyone from the community. So we are pushing, we are networking with the, you know, the state's office here, and we are connecting with them to create the, what do you say, the training spaces, the hostel, more queer friendly, trans friendly, where trans people can feel safe in taking the trainings, which is, you know, their right, and they can get jobs. So this is one thing which we are doing currently. Second thing is, you know, the challenges about throwing out from home, like not having a home. Like for many people, home is the safest place, but definitely for queer people, home is, you know, most of us, it's not the safest place. It starts from here. The harassment starts from here. The discrimination starts from here, you know. So many of the young people we work with, they don't have a home properly. They are often, you know, run out of home. They often ran out of home. And during COVID also, there were times where many of them could not stay. There was a phenomenon called reverse migration, where like I'm from Northeast, so many of the young people from Northeast, because we do not have any opportunities in our region, we often go to migrate to other places for education, jobs, and, you know, many livelihood options and safe spaces. But when COVID happened, like they were all turned back. They had to come back to home. They lost their jobs. They lost all their safe spaces. So they came in, you know, in our places again, but we do not have those opportunities. Right. So at home they were staying, and the you know, harassment started at home. The violence started at home. So they again had no home in the time of crisis. So we, through crowdfunding, set up a shelter home here in Manipur. It is we are going to inaugurate in the 17th itself, where people facing crisis or conflict will be provided free shelter, free food, and skill-based trainings. This is going to be the first such center in India, which is totally run by the community and by young people, and it is fully run on crowdfunding. So this is something which we are doing, that we realize there is no home. You know, there is no space where they could be trained on livelihood and economic inclusion. So we are using this space, community space, where they will be trained on, you know, handloom, handicraft products, and they can, earn. We will be employing them, the community people, and we are trying to get this product sent out through markets, you know, through different companies, different CSRs who are willing to take up products from northeast part of the country, and we will employ these people and also generate revenue for the organization as well as for their own families. So these are a few things. Sorry, one plane is coming.
No, but these were really important insights, Sadam. Thank you so much for sharing. You know, as you rightly mentioned, unfortunately, for a lot of queer individuals, family is not the place, which is not a comfort space. In fact, at times, family is the first entity which throws them out on the streets, and that's where the shelter aspect, the kind of, you know, accommodation aspect that you have mentioned, it's really, really valuable, because that's how, that is the foundation, and based on that, then the person, you know, further skilling and everything can happen. So thank you so much. Shorya, would you like to touch base upon this same question? Any insights for us?
Sure. So I think from our perspective, the way that we have worked is that it is very important for us to first normalize and destigmatize the kind of issues that trans people go through. So because as Sadam even said, that trans people continue to face a lot of discrimination and stigmatization even within the queer community, and there is a lot of from a heteronormative perspective, we view queer community as one community, but even within the queer community there is a lot of intersections, there are a lot of biases, prejudices, discriminations that exist. So it is very important to understand those issues that exist, and trans people continue to face a lot of discrimination from the queer community itself, and from their own families. Most of them do not have a good support system in place, that a lot of us do. and therefore, to conversation around this is, I think, is the first step that we do. Then the second is to provide safe place for them, safe communities that they can be a part of, digital communities, because the kind of work Humans of Safe Places does is we build digital, safe and empathetic communities wherein they can feel accepted, the fact that they are not alone in their journeys and in their struggles, and that they can feel accepted, and that they are not alone in their journeys, and they can develop a sense of resilience about their own issues. Because the kind of problems and the kind of challenges queer people face are different from that of a person who's not queer. And of course, so which is why safe communities can have a huge role in sort of providing visibility, equal representation, equal visibility to their challenges, but also to make them feel accepted and to make them feel a part of a larger community. And third is by providing them role models, again highlighting people who have been through their journeys and who are doing better. And fourth is through community-led initiatives around mental health and emotional wellness. I think it is something that can go a long way in providing support to the queer community and the trans community, because it's accessible. Because the community-led models are more accessible than the one-to-one models that currently exist. Again, as I said, that the whole community aspect of it is something that is especially needed by the queer and the trans community. So that is something that can go a long way. And yeah, that's it. This is what I think we do, and this is what I think can actually be very helpful.
Thank you so much for that. And that's what finding your tribe is all about. Like I said, even after coming out, there is the singling out process continues, maybe not visibly, but there is still this unrequiredness continues. And that is where finding your tribe, the community-based approach that you mentioned, is extremely, extremely important. I hope Lamea has settled down now. Lamea, do you have any inputs for us on the same question? Okay.
Lamea has also shared some of her points in the chat as well. So if you're able to read some of them, that would be perfect.
Okay. Fine. Sure. So moving on then, see, it's also about then representation, and often representation by the heteronormative individuals is misconstrued for reservation, and then again for the misconstrued for non-meritocratic kind of representation, which is not the case. Representation is required so that we create equal opportunities for especially these sections which have been oppressed and marginalized for generations due to a lot of misunderstandings, biases, and prejudices. Shorya, anything you would like to touch base upon when it comes to representation, its requiredness, and how it's not about compromising the merit?
I don't think it is about compromising the merit, because imagine there is a person who's had access to equal opportunities, who's had access to opportunities, who's had a good support system, who has grown up in a healthy environment where they have not been, bullied, or at least not been, or in comparison, or relatively less bullying, less stigma, less abuse, in comparison to a person who's just understood, who's just begun to understand themselves somewhere in their mid 20s or somewhere in their teenage years, because for a heteronormative person, you do not come out, as Sadam said, you do not come out if you are a heterosexual person, right? But you come out when you are a queer person, because it takes you that kind of years to just understand that part of you, and to make peace, or to sort of be at peace with that part of you, and imagine something that happens to a queer, to a heterosexual person, say by when they are, say, 6, 7, that's taking, say, 10 plus years, or 15 plus years, for another queer person. And that's just one aspect of it. I'm not even talking about the other challenges that they face, the kind of bullying, the kind of lack of support. Most of the people do not kind of get that support from their families. And they have to start building their support system from scratch all again. And they have to redefine what love means to them. And there is a lot of struggle. There's a lot of, I think, work that takes place. They have to look for a place wherein they will not face, at least, that they can at least, just have those basic respect, and that this basic, system, basic support system in terms of a workplace. We're not even looking for a very queer friendly, or like a very queer friendly workplace. Most of them are just looking for places wherein they can just get by, So I think there is this huge gap that exists, that a heterosexual person or a non-queer person will never go through in their life. So I think it only makes sense to provide greater resources, greater opportunities to them, to just help them be on the same level. And it
Correct.
is not very repressive.
The point that you just touched base upon, recognizing one's privileges. And, a lot of cishet individuals, at least I am surrounded by, fail to recognize their privileges. And that's why, because they themselves don't recognize their privileges, they cannot fathom the struggle of a queer individual, because it's just not there, because you don't understand what kind of a privilege a life you just have lived, because you don't think that's a privilege. And that's why then you will be able to never understand the struggles a queer individual goes through. So coming back to you, Sadam, would you like to touch base upon this aspect? How recognizing privileges is important for any individual trying to understand the journeys of queer people?
Yeah, definitely. For me also, I always say that I'm a privileged person in that way, that I fall into the cis category of being queer also, where I can hide my identity with and mingle with anyone. And I have used that. I never thought I will be using this, but I have used that to network with more people. I have used this to connect with more people. And until and unless you recognize these privileges, it's also difficult for us to move and for them to move. Otherwise, they will stay in the place where they were thinking, how they might also use that again as saying that, often comes up within the community also, that, for cis persons, so cis people and for trans people, there are different struggles. So we definitely need to acknowledge that. Acknowledging the privileges is one important thing if we need to move forward. So for me, the privilege of being able to kind of language here. Like when we are talking here, we are speaking in English, and this is another privilege that I have, and which many other people do not have. And this I have used fully for my own community, where I can showcase what we are doing with other people. And for many people, this is such a disadvantage, right? That they cannot speak up, and until and unless we speak up, people won't understand. And like when you said earlier also about our journey being, once we come out, people think that this is it, this is the end. There's, then you live a very happy, very rainbowy life. That is also, some privilege that many people are still not able to come out. because of the fear, because of all the stigma that they would be living with. There are so many people, even though they are highly educated or know everything about all these things, but still not able to come out. So I should say privilege plays a very big role, and it's important that we also use it in a very, very supportive way for others' development. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
there's
sure.
one thing. Yeah, there's one thing I'd like to add. I mean, just came to my mind. There was a conversation I had with a Dalit queer individual, I think a few years back. And then what she told me was something that it took me like a lot of time to understand that how her challenges, how her how her situation is absolutely different from that of a person of a queer person coming from a so-called high caste or upper caste. And how it was absolutely how when she participated, like she came from a smaller city, and when she moved to Delhi, she assumed that just because there's a pride circle, there's a pride walk that already exists, and she'll find more relatable people there. But then she was not able to relate to any of the experiences of other people just because of how important caste plays a role in. So I think it's very important to understand that there are so many other intersections.
Yeah.
Definitely, I can add one definitely to that. Within the community, one thing which I have often faced is the regional, discrimination. like from people from Northeast, right? We don't often see representation in the mainstream queer representation in India. So often, this I always talk everywhere, that why are we not acknowledging that there is racial discrimination within the queer community also? Like when I was in Bombay studying, and when I was in Bombay studying, there was a lot which I had to face through because of where I am from, from Manipur, a place, and definitely a lot of what do you say, identities, politics happens, identity discrimination happens, like how Soria spoke about Dalit. And in our place, there are no Dalits, but definitely there are tribes and identities that we are. But again, because they do not know about this, sometimes their ignorance, right? The ignorance acts as a way of discrimination towards us, and they don't understand their privilege of being in the mainstream, and they don't know about the struggles of being in the periphery. So there's a lot which we have to try to fit in. Even in India, we live in the same country. People still ask, which country are you from? So the kind of I'm just smiling it out here, just remembering all those conversations and all those questions, and their kind of the attitudes towards people from a smaller region where they don't understand or where they don't think that's a part of the country. So that privileges lies with them, and that's why we are using our privilege, right, to when we get such platforms where we try to bring in racial component into into a large country like India. When we talk about LGBTI movement or queer narratives, there's a huge chunk which is missing, and these are the ones that we are trying to bring up through many initiatives like sports, because sports was not considered something related to pride at all. But Northeast being a part which has played very important role in the sports development in the country, we are bringing in sports as something which can talk about our pride, using our identity and our skills. So yeah, definitely there's a lot of things to be done and on acknowledging privileges. Yeah.
Yeah, and just for the relatability perspective for the audience, so imagine even today, we are still kind of struggling and talking about equality for cisgender women. Imagine after so many years, and imagine then where queer individuals stand in that process. Just based on this narrative, you can fathom the inequality that is there, the extremity of the inequality that is there in the society. Now, in the interest of time, quickly, any question from the audience? Anybody would like to ask any question to the amazing panelists? I think somebody has raised hands. Cynthia, can you help unmuting the person and help them ask the question? I can see a hand raised.
Hi, yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say very cool that Springboard organized this. And it's such a very cool to hear from all different perspectives. I had a question. I actually put it in the chat, but I'll speak it out anyway. And I wanted to ask, like, what does it look like? What do the small wins look like from the point of views from each of your respective fields and activities? Because I think there's of course like big leaping bounds, but then there's always the small things do matter as well. Yeah, that's it.
I hope the panelists could hear the question. So what are your small wins is what they are trying to ask.
Is it small wins or is it small ways? Ways to build a community.
I think wins, am I correct? Yeah.
Smaller achievements.
Yeah, small achievements.
So I'll tell you my small win, okay? Maybe based on that you can. So, I lead Pride Network, yeah, which, kind of work towards creating a more inclusive workspace for LGBTI plus people at my workplace. So coming out is a very personal process at the workplace. Just because you have a network doesn't mean people will start coming out like that. And that's where, if you start counting how many gays are there and lesbians are there, you will see the network is not successful. But where my small wins lie, a colleague finds a confidant in me and comes out to me and shares their problem with a hope that, I can be that person who can hold their hand without nobody knowing and help them kind of sustain at the workplace. So this is what small win, big win is for me, So similarly, then what are your small wins?
I think it's raining. Can you hear me properly? It's starting to rain here again. The thunderstorm has come here.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Hope you're safe.
Yeah,
and we can hear you.
Yeah. So for me, small wins is like one thing which really makes me happy is, because I talk a lot about sports, right? So in football ground, when we have every Sunday, we have every session a football match, which we use for talking about mental health. We talk about sexual health, reproductive health, education, jobs. So all these queer people come down every Sunday and we discuss things. We sit in the ground and we play a match for 1 hour. Then we discuss about other things, what's going on with your life. So they always, come out and start speaking up now. And what has happened is like the parents, they have started coming and dropping them. That is how their parents have started, accepting their child. And also they come out to see the practice, the play, and it is something which makes you happy inside. I know that this is not a very big win that I have, we have done it, but somehow inside you feel that, their parents is dropping them to the ground, knowing that this is a queer people's, football play. So that is one thing which I'm really happy with.
Great. What about you, Shorya?
So I think it's very similar to yours, Amita. So for example, for me also, since our major focus is on building safe places, I think our small wins are when, people can find that safe place that we are trying to build and share, the most personal, the most intimate stories from their lives that they have perhaps not even shared with their closest confidants. I think those are the small wins for us. I mean, when we are actually able to provide them the community that they want to, or wherein they can actually be themselves.
Great, thank you. So in the interest of time, maybe we'll not be able to take any more questions through the session, but always you have our details. Please feel free to reach out, share the questions with the organizing committee and we'll try to answer. Yeah. Now, on a concluding note, any message that you want the audience to leave with? We'll start with you, Sadam. Any message for the audience?
Like, it's not a message, but it's like something which I have always felt that, earlier I always used to feel that I'm the most vulnerable person, and definitely I'm the most weakest person. So I think when I started sharing my story, when I started coming out, speaking up, I started realizing it is, not only for me, but I have used my vulnerabilities into my strength. I have, and that's how we are able to connect with more people, and more people are also joining in, and definitely this has helped. So I would definitely say that, if you have some story, you could definitely share it, and you don't know how many people will be impacted and inspired. So just be that safe space for anyone, and it works wonder. Yeah, and your vulnerability is not your weakness, definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. What about you, Shorya?
So for me, I think the one message that I want to give out is that I believe that empathy and kindness has the power to, really change the world and progress the society that we currently live in. That's one single tool that can actually drive a lot of change. That is my personal belief. But I also believe that it's not possible for us to be kind to others unless we are kind to our own self first.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
therefore, so I just want everyone, I have done this for myself. I've worked on my own self. I've worked for my own self. I worked on my own mental, emotional well-being, which has further allowed me to work for others. And this is my general message for everyone. By work, I do not necessarily mean to become a social entrepreneur, but I just mean that, to be more kinder and to be less discriminatory or violent or abusive towards other marginalized or just other people in our lives. That's just my message.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shorya. So, I think in the interest of time now, we'll come to the conclusion part of this panel discussion. Thank you, Sadam. Thank you, Shorya. Thank you, Lamea, for joining this discussion and sharing these insights with you. I'm sure the audience have got a lot to learn and a lot of key takeaways from this discussion. Also, I express my gratitude towards the organizers for giving me this opportunity. I feel really honored and humbled to share this platform with you all. So thank you so much. Back to you, Nisha.
Thank you so much, Amita and Sadam and Shorya and Lamea. Sorry, Lamea, we couldn't hear more of you, but we could definitely see your passion and how much you care and your kindness. I know that you all are on amazing journeys. I can see it, I can feel it, and I'm just curious, and I'm really excited to see where you all go. Hopefully we'll be in touch in 10 years, 20 years from now, see you, reach amazing heights. I've learned a lot from this session, and I have to say, I think I'm really humbled, and I'm also kind of, I was made aware of how much I don't know. And I learned so much from all of you. And, for us, so my key takeaway, for me would be to learn from you all, to just not give up. I like how Sadam said that, vulnerabilities can actually be a strength. So it's how we turn it around. And for Shorya, thanks for bringing up empathy and kindness, because I think we need that more in the world today than any other time. And Amita, your presence and your energy was just amazing to see. And you blew away our questions, and that was great. I think your questions were amazing. And, just to hear all these amazing stories and insights from everyone was just great. I'm sure everybody here has, learned a lot from you all, to persevere and not give up, and to be more accepting and kind to people. So I just want to thank everyone for being here. And I also want to thank all my colleagues who have helped us put this together and, be such a supportive team always. And the one thing that, I'm actually going to kind of shamelessly probably call out on you for, Amita, is hopefully you can be, a mentor and a supporter of all our young social entrepreneurs and young people who work with us. And what we want is not to end our connection here, our relationship. We want to grow it. So we are going to be reaching out to you. Maybe some of our young people will also reach out to you. and we want to do more. So yeah, look out for our emails and hear more from us. But really appreciate this, and thanks again. I'm going to hand it over to Cynthia to